Crisis? What crisis? The South African president meets Robert Mugabe, then tells voters in Zimbabwe to be patient over the delayed election results. It was hoped Thabo Mbeki would put pressure on his old ally to end the stalemate in Zimbabwe. Instead, the South African leader refused to even recognise there's a crisis. Also on the programme, calls for a clampdown on supersized drinks. Do we really know just how much we're consuming? Missing model, a mother's fears for her beauty queen daughter who disappeared 8 days ago.
She's very trusting. She trusts anybody out there. She believes anything anyone says to her. She's very vulnerable.
And the Queen's reign. Queen of the South reached their first Scottish Cup final after a 7-goal thriller. Good evening. South Africa's president has dismissed any suggestion of a deepening political crisis in Zimbabwe as the country endures an agonising wait to find out the result of last month's elections. Thabo Mbeki said voters who went to the polls 2 weeks ago just needed to be a bit more patient. His comments followed a private meeting with Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, who was scathing about Gordon Brown, dismissing him as just a tiny little dot on the world. That, as the British Prime Minister called for the official results to be published. Harry Smith reports.
Stopping off in Harare on his way to the summit of African leaders in Zambia, Thabo Mbeki was welcomed like the old friend he is. He's always refused to criticise Mugabe, and the body language as they clasped hands on the red carpet suggested he wasn't about to change tack. Crisis? What crisis was his response to reporters' questions as he told them the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission must be given time to release the results of the presidential poll.
Yeah, of course, it's also the matter of the court case of the court to rule, I understand, on Monday. And if nobody wins a clear majority in terms of presidential elections, the law provides that there should be a second round.
Mugabe himself will not attend the summit in Lusaka. Opposition politicians who claim their leader, Morgan Tsvangirai, won the presidential vote will be there to demand a strong condemnation of Mugabe.
I think the Africans who will be meeting in the room next door must speak strongly and decisively against the dictatorship and against the status quo in respect of which our people are suffering, our people are being brutalized.
Gordon Brown today warned Mugabe that the world was losing patience with him.
The international community will look to Zimbabwe for a declaration of elections, and if there is to be a future election, that there's proper international monitoring of what's going on.
Robert Mugabe poured scorn on the warning.
Brown is the world, sure, the world is losing patience, but I know Brown is a little tiny dot on this world.
And he shows no sign of heeding that or any other warning. The Zimbabwean people now suffering acute water and food shortages, with little confidence that the Lusaka summit will make any difference. Harry Smith, ITV News.
Doctors say landlords who serve up supersized glasses of wines and spirits are irresponsible and are encouraging people to binge drink without even knowing it. But the industry says the larger measures are just giving the customers what they want. Stephen Douglas investigates.
According to the Royal College of Physicians, the race is on to get the pub industry's house in order. Larger measures, it says, mean more and more of us don't know how much we're drinking. Well, this is the apparent problem. If you take a look at this glass, this is a 125 millilitre glass of wine. It used to be the standard measure you got in a pub. It's been replaced by this, 175 millilitres. With this, a 250 millilitre glass now being considered a large. Now, what we're being told is around 14% of licensed premises are only offering their customers this large measure, the equivalent of a third of a bottle of wine.
Sadly, I'm afraid it's all too true that pubs are probably colluding with the public in terms of excess drinking.
The rough guidelines for drinking and driving are 4 units of alcohol for men and 3 units for women. A 125 millilitre glass of wine is the equivalent to about 1.5 units. But a large 250-millilitre glass contains 3 units and could potentially put women dangerously close to the drink drive limit. I asked these drinkers if they really know how much alcohol they're consuming.
Well, I don't really know what measures they are, to be honest. I either ask for a small glass of wine or a large glass of wine. I wouldn't know what the measures were.
I think if you're driving, getting a glass of wine, a bit dodgy, isn't it? A bit dodgy. You don't know what you're getting.
The pub industry says it's simply offering the customer more options.
We want to serve the customers, and if there are issues about size of glass, then it should be a matter of choice for them, and well-informed choice.
But the Liberal Democrats are now pushing for a change in the law. If it became a reality, it would force all pubs to offer the smallest measures when customers go to the bar. Stephen Douglas, ITV News, Central London.
In other news this evening, Kate and Jerry McCann may refuse to help police with the reconstruction of their daughter's disappearance. They say they're angry that interviews they gave to detectives about Madeleine were leaked to the media. Anyone seen throwing rubbish from a car window could end up receiving a fine through the post. New proposals would mean the registered owner of the vehicle has to pay a penalty or identify the culprit. And some familiar faces have developed an appetite for destruction in a campaign to highlight the suffering of children caught up in one of the world's deadliest conflicts. Matt Damon and Jodie Richardson are among those destroying toys, a symbol of the suffering faced by so many youngsters in Darfur. It comes ahead of a global day of protest tomorrow, 5 years on from the start of the conflict. A teenage model who struggled to cope with a rare medical condition has vanished after meeting a man on the internet. Kofi Dunbar from Cumberland in South Wales was diagnosed with Bell's palsy, which paralyses part of the face. Speaking to ITV News, her mother said her disappearance was totally out of character. Greg Eastill reports.
She's an aspiring model and beauty queen who was even a finalist in Miss Teen UK. But Kofi Dunbar's 2-year battle with Bell's palsy, which causes one side of the face to droop for periods, looks to have instead dominated the young model's mind. Her mother says Kofi had been bullied at school.
It started when she had obviously facial paralysis. She went to school. She thought that most probably the kids wouldn't say or they'd accept the way she was. But it became so intense that the school sent her back home.
Kofi's mother says she found the number of an older man on her daughter's mobile phone who she'd met on the internet, who told her she was with him in Croydon. She visited Kofi there and says the 17-year-old looked malnourished and drawn. But after saying she would come home, Kofi apparently vanished again, along with her friend.
She's very trusting. She trusts anybody out there. She believes anything anyone says to her. She's very vulnerable. She's a teenager that hasn't fully matured as yet.
Oscar-winning actor George Clooney suffered from episodes of Bell's palsy as a teenager, but it never barred his route to the red carpet. But Kofi's family say she's lost confidence and they badly want her home. Greg Eastill, ITV News.
Sport now, and Ospreys won Rugby Union's EDF Energy Cup final against Leicester at Twickenham by 23 points to 6 this afternoon. James Hook set up both Osprey tries and kicked 13 points to inspire his team to victory. Andy Bishop and Alan Wynne-Jones were the try scorers. On to football, and 6 Premier League matches have already been played today. Here are the results. Birmingham drew 1-1 with Everton. There were wins for both Bolton and Fulham. Aston Villa scored 6 goals against Derby at Pride Park. The latest score from Portsmouth versus Newcastle is 0-0. Manchester City beat Sunderland 2-1, and it ended 1-1 between Tottenham and Middlesbrough. And Queen of the South are through to their first ever Scottish Cup final after a 7-goal thriller against Aberdeen. The First Division side from Dumfries beat their Premier League opposition 4-3 at Hampden Park. Matt Rumsey watched the match.
The Queen of the South shall rise up in the judgment with the men of this generation. One of few league clubs in the United Kingdom to get a mention in the Bible, Queen of the South are through to the final of the Scottish Cup for the first time in their history. Gordon Chisholm's side beat Aberdeen 4-3. Here's how David slew Goliath. Steve Tosh scored the opening goal of the game against his former club, but that was cancelled out by Andrew Considine before half-time. Paul Burns put Queens ahead for a second time, but here's Barry Nicholson's goal and celebration to make it emphatically 2-2. Enter Sean O'Connor to the fray, that's 3-2. Great entertainment, the teams matching each other goal for goal. Andrew Considine got another 3-3, but here's the important one. The goal that put Queen of the South through to their first ever Scottish Cup final. John Stewart, the hero of Dumfries. Rangers, Partick or St Johnstone will be their opponents. Matt Rumsey, ITV News.
And that's the way the news and sport is looking so far this Saturday evening. We'll be back with the latest at 11 tonight. Until then, whatever you're doing, enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
The stormy weather clouds the sky with chills.